Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And we are streaming on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. That's facebook.com/Activist Post. Well, it's Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. We are coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. I think I'm coming down with something, a little bit of a cold or something. The weather's changing. It's actually colder here than it is in LA, so that's strange. But I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining about the weather. I'm not complaining about the fact that we are still here and alive and safe even after our last couple of shows. We've got a great guest for you today. This guy, if you don't know about him, you are going to absolutely be obsessed now, and he may turn you into a farmer. We've got Joel Salatin, the owner of Polyface Farms, and self-described lunatic farmer. You guys are really going to like this interview in the second hour. In the first hour, we've got some stories. The main one, we're going to talk about a narrative that I believe is going to be the new fake news, and it certainly is growing now, and this is the troll factory. So for those people who don't know what's been going on with Facebook and turning over the Russian ads, we're going to talk a little bit about where this is coming from and what this potentially means. We also have some other stories if we get to them. I'm trying to spend a lot of time with Joel today. So to help me to get through all of that today is, as always, my good friend, co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning, dude. What a week. This has been a very strange week for me, and I'm going to tell you. So last week we spent damn near 2 hours going over my drone theory for the Vegas shooting. We still have no answers on the Vegas shooting. A lot of people are turning around now and they're like, "Oh, actually, everybody knows there's something wrong."
Yeah.
For me, though, it was an interesting week because, one, we don't do conspiracy theories.
Right.
So it's been almost a year of the show, right? This is our 51st show. So this is 51 weeks. Next week is the 1 year anniversary, and I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do. We've got the guest figured out, but I don't know. We'll talk about what we should do. But in that year, I think that we have a very unique audience.
Yeah.
Right? We've garnered a unique audience because we do things a little differently. Because we're really trying to get at truth. We're really trying to talk about solutions. And it's not a lot of red meat for people who are naturally like paranoid schizophrenics. You know what I mean? Which is what you get with like Alex Jones or David Icke. We love him. We had him on the show. Thankfully, he didn't talk about reptilians on the show. But it's like when you start getting it, the Mark Dices and everything with the Illuminati and breaking down the Super Bowl halftime act, and it's like, okay. I mean, there's this phenomenon is one called pareidolia. Have you heard of this?
No.
This is when you look in the clouds and you see a human face, or like you look at a stucco wall and you see like faces. You look at the ground and you see faces. The face on Mars.
Right.
It's this human. It's a phenomenon where our brains naturally are trying to make out faces and shapes out of anything that we see, like trying to see animals, trying to see this, which makes sense, right? Because we evolved as like hunters.
Yeah.
So we're looking in the brush and we're trying to see an animal. We're trying to see if there's a human being hiding there, that's camouflaged, whatever. So like our brain is naturally does that. We see these human touches and we make these connections by nature. And we have to be aware that our brains are doing that and really try to be like, ooh, am I adding something on here that is just me seeing a face in the clouds, right? One of the things, because we don't do conspiracy theory stuff on the show of that style, was that even though I was trying to not do that with this particular piece that we said, and I was it really started off the sort of principle that we said that if a rape happens in a neighborhood and there's a rapist who lives on the block, you at least go knock on his door.
Right.
Like, especially if you don't have another suspect where you have a motive, right? You're like, until somebody else shows up and until this narrative makes sense in another way, we'll explore all the avenues.
Yeah.
But this door, we're going to keep it open, right? The rapist on the block, if a rape happens on the block, hey. So in this case, it was like military weapons, mysterious circumstances. There happens to be a top secret weapons testing facility on the block. Let's open the door. And it happens to be an aerial weapons testing, airplanes and whatnot, drones as well. Let's just open the door. But not just opening the door, what it did was it opened a Pandora's box. And unfortunately, all this week, I've been getting emails, private messages, tweets, all of this with the crazy, paranoid, schizophrenic conspiracy theory shit. And I don't like that stuff. It makes me nervous.
Yeah,
it makes me
seriously.
No, what it really makes me is it's annoying to me. Right? Because I pride myself on, like, if somebody reaches out to me, and anybody who's watching the show who's ever reached out to me will know your email's getting answered.
Yeah.
Like, if you're reaching out legitimately, I'm not going to shut you down. I'm not going to shine you on. Like, as a matter of fact, if it's a YouTube comment and you're really asking a question, you may get an answer within like 30 seconds. Because it matters to me.
Right.
Like, this is what we're doing here. This is not like a one-way street. Not only that, we've ended up getting stories, we've ended up getting content, all of that from listeners, right? It's important. This is a community, and especially because we're dedicated to solutions, especially people asking me about solutions, and we'll talk about some of that as well, because I came to some realizations this week. But it opened up this Pandora's box, and so it was a little bit of a difficult week for me. And I really, at one point, was like, do I even want to fucking keep doing this show? Like, is this... Because you want to get, like, I was really worried that, like, well, you want to give people what they want. People seem to want this, but the people that want it are not the type of people that I even want to be dealing with. Because, like, then I get into a weird space. The other thing about it is, you know, and this was something before last week, you and I had a phone conversation that I think was very, very valid, because I was a bit on edge.
Yeah.
You were a bit on edge. We live in Vegas. We know the truth of the matter of being here is that things happen in this town.
Yeah.
And things have traditionally happened in this town, and that's just the way that things are. And some weird things have happened. Where's the security guard? Where's, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
all kinds of weird shit.
Shit's, like, so it's, and the thing is, I would not have gotten on and even talked about my theory were I not confident. Like, in other words, I'm not getting on to fucking play around.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not playing around. If I'm sharing information and I'm sharing a theory, it's because for me, I'm most confident that this is what the truth is. I only want to get on here and say what I'm most confident that the truth is, what story makes the most sense to me as being the truth. Now, I'm happy to hear an alternative story change my mind. Let me say, oh, that narrative makes more sense. It reflects reality better. But I'm not getting on here to talk about the globalists and reptilians and all that shit because it's fun and it's fucking Halloween and you know what I mean? Let's put on a little costume and scare each other. Like, I'm not here to do that. I'm here for it's real life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Everything that we do here, from the guests, from the stories, everything, I'm trying to share what I know to the greatest degree to be real. Like, because it's not even entertaining to me to sit around and fucking tell stories. Fictional stories.
Right.
Right? If I wanted to do that, I'd become a screenwriter. Or a fiction writer or something like that. Like, that's not what we're here to do. Like, we're here to actually try to give some information. So that means, what does that mean? That means that potentially I was in some danger. You know what I mean? Potentially you were in some danger. That's why we had a conversation. Now, the particular narrative that I believe that it was and that we talked about, it's like the danger to us is relatively minimal. One, because we're done talking about it and expanding the theory. That's one. Two, because according to that particular theory, it's a top secret operation. why would you go out and like prove these particular individuals out of everybody that's saying things? Why would you let something happen to them and whatnot? So better to just shine it on. It didn't go viral. That's fine. We've said our piece. I've said my piece. I feel like I've said my piece of responsibility. But I was like, and why would I put myself in danger for those paranoid schizophrenic people that, like, that's not even who I would want to put myself in danger for.
Right.
If I'm going to put myself in danger, I'm going to put myself, if I'm going to risk life or limb, I'm going to risk it in furtherance of the cause of freedom. I mean, that didn't even really, so barring anything else happening in Vegas in the future, I think I'm going to stay away from the conspiracy theory. There's so much more to talk about, but in thinking about that, I'm glad that it happened that way, because in thinking about that, it really got me to thinking, and it's good, and I think a year in, it's good to start like, have some introspection and question. It really got me to thinking like, is there something that I could be doing so I know what not to do? But is there something that I could be doing that would be furthering the cause more so? And so what I'm going to be putting together very soon, just to let people know so that they're on the lookout. The one thing that I'm at that people reach out to me the most about, because I was like, well, if I don't want people reaching out about this, what is the thing that I do want people, like, what are people asking for? And even you've asked about it before. And it's like someone reaching out and saying, listen, I have zero background in software. Where should I start?
That's great.
Where should I start? And so I'm going to put together a course, a series of courses, but certainly the first one is going to be like, because I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
Right? I'm self-taught, and most of the best developers that I've worked with are self-taught also. And really, if you're doing the latest shit, you have to be self-taught because there's nowhere to go to learn it.
Right. Makes sense.
Right? Like so we're constantly, as developers, we're learning as we go, and that's just an expectation. But there's a very basic sort of framework or background where you can, very few things that you need to know to kind of bootstrap your knowledge to a place where you can even go and learn more. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like, what is that core tool set, that core vocabulary, that core... all of that. So that's what's going to be in the course, to the point where after the end of 6 weeks, first off, you're going to be coding in 2 minutes, because I believe you code first and understand it later, because that's actually what you're going to end up doing a lot of the time when you're coding. Like, you're going to be working with code where you actually have never even, maybe even looked at the code because you just took a library from somewhere. And it's not until something breaks or whatever that you have to go in. So first you start out coding, then you figure out what it is that you're doing, then you play around. So you're going to be coding in the first 2 minutes, and by the end, you're going to be able to actually go out and learn more, as much as you want for yourself. Learn new languages, learn new frameworks, develop all of that. You're going to have enough background to be like, when you see certain words, code is no longer going to look like Chinese. You're going to look at it and you're going to be like, I don't necessarily know what this whole program is doing, but I can take it step by step by step by step. So you'll be a coder by the end of this, and
it's awesome.
It's going to be 90 minutes live seminar every week with chance for people to reach out, and it'll be 6 weeks.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
And I was like, that's something that I can definitely do.
Yeah, and you know, going back to things that happened last week and looking at the show and all that stuff, I went through a really cool process as well that started off very, like you said, almost a little nervous.
Of course.
But it showed me exactly what I've been learning. Like, the only way to overcome fear and anything negative, let's just say that, fear, anger, you know, any of the negative emotions, the only possible way to overcome that is to trust in the process and overcome it with a positive. So in other words, a good way to overcome fear would be to be grateful for it, you know?
Oh, because at that point you know that you've gone beyond your comfort zone.
Right. So you're gonna let's say, you know, going into the show, I was fearful about it or whatever. I looked at it and I said, no, I'm not going to be fearful. I'm going to be grateful that that fear showed me something through the process.
It's interesting. I mean, I think gratitude and appreciation, every spiritual teacher, I think, that I have ever encountered who I've thought that they were worth a damn. And I use that broadly, right? That could be anybody from, Alan Watts to the fucking Dalai Lama to Tony Robbins, you know what I mean? To business mentors that I've had. That gratitude and appreciation.
It's something that they always talk about. And I never really, I've looked at it pretty close, but not at this level because I was going through emotional. Sure. But yeah, man, there's serious magic there. Serious magic.
Well, I think that on the reverse, and this is something that we're going to talk about, is, well, look, gratitude. I think that the biggest thing with the gratitude and appreciation is that you're talking really about this is taking responsibility for your own emotions, right? Because
self-ownership.
Right? Bam, self-ownership.
Yep.
Thank you to everybody who's bought the book. If you want to throw up the link, we may as well talk about this before we get into it. Selfownership.me, you can go and get the book. Every copy signed.
It's amazing.
Or you could get the digital copy and audiobook only for cryptocurrency. And so what I'm going to do with this I'm going to do 2 tracks. Like, this is my initial starting point with this coding course. Is you're going to have the basics, and then there's going to be 2 tracks that you can follow. One of them is cryptocurrency. One of them is automation.
Sick.
Right, so you can learn. By the end of the automation thing, you'll actually know how to do it. Well, I'm going to do Raspberry Pi, so you're going to know how to set up a Raspberry Pi. You're going to be able to. I'm going to have you be able to automate things in your house, and also to log in with your smartphone. And on the other side, you're going to actually be able to build out a connection to an API so that you can run your own shopping carts with cryptocurrency and all of that in the same way that we're doing with the book, shirts. This is a Christian Ray's original. Very few people have this shirt.
I love that shirt.
This is. Do you know how people are asking me constantly if we're going to do a reprint of this shirt? Because everybody who's got one, like I've seen Adam Williams wearing it in interviews. Matt Phillips wearing this in interviews. Like, people love this. The material's great. We've got a bunch of shirts. Why don't you show the shirts? These are at Govern Yourself.
Also with that too, I got a picture back from Luke. Yes. He was wearing the shirt. I sent him actually an extra one as a nice little bonus because it took a little bit longer for me to print it and ship it out than I wanted to, but I made sure that it was
I love it, dude.
Taken care of. So he sent me a picture back, and he's like, I'm wearing it right now. He was excited about it. So
dude, they're great. Here's the Crypto Savage. What else do we got? Keep calm and avoid taxation. That's great. Great girls tee. Murray Rothbard on the chalkboard. Gotta love that one. Litecoin. What else do we got? Litecoin. Is there anything else?
That's it right now.
So you've got Ethereum. Is there a Bitcoin one?
There's a Bitcoin one. There's a couple others on there too.
Cool. So why don't you throw up the link for that? Oh, there it is. Governyourself.com. And boom. Little baby vodka action. Throw it up there. Baby vodka. So this is really awesome. This is brand new. Already a couple people have gotten these, and I've shipped them off. So
nice.
Every bottle is engraved right here. We'll talk more about the vodka and that whole experience. I'm thinking about sitting down with George, the distiller, and doing a little and talking about it, because it is agorism. It's that, I'm big on the gray markets, but where I believe that it's those spaces, and it's something we'll talk with Joel Salatin about, but it's those spaces in the law, that wiggle room, that what people would call loopholes, but it's like, look, this is not a loophole. This is the remaining free space. Because before the law, you could do everything. You could do all of it, right? The law cut you off from doing like that. It's so weird how people have this is part of the big hypnosis where they have like the reverse,
right?
Where they don't understand that, like, no, everything that is not regulated is legal, because before those regs were there, you could do it. Like, don't don't go the opposite way and think that it starts out with you being able to do nothing and then you're getting your rights from the government because the government is allowing you to do something. That's the slave mentality.
Right.
Right? We have the capability to take care of ourselves and to do wonderful things, and we're being prevented from doing that by the state, which is just made up of a bunch of psychopaths, which brings us straight around to what I woke up to. It's funny because we had this troll factory story all lined up. And because I had sat and I was talking about the editors and activists post, and I was like, I think that this is the new thing. Like, it's been sitting in the background for about a year, but I think this is about to pop up. And I woke up to this shit, Hillary Clinton with WikiLeaks.
I think Assange has become a kind of nihilistic opportunist who does the bidding of a dictator.
Lots of people, including in Australia, think that Assange is a martyr for free speech and freedom of information. How would you describe him?
I mean, he's a tool of Russian intelligence, and if he's such a martyr of free speech, why doesn't WikiLeaks ever publish anything coming out of Russia?
Isn't he just doing what journalists do, which is publish information when they get it?
I don't think so. I think, for number one, it's stolen information, and number two, if all you did was publish it, that would be one thing. But there was a concerted operation between WikiLeaks and Russia, and most likely people in the United States, to, as I say, weaponize that information.
So everybody is everybody but her. Everybody but her is to blame for what? What's going on, Christian?
My sound just went off.
Sound is weird?
Oh, there we go. Got it. I hit the wrong button.
No, everybody but her is to blame. This goes back to what you were talking about the gratitude, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, I was supposed to win, I didn't win. And as opposed to saying, you know what, everything happens for a reason. Let me regroup.
Exactly.
Let me have some introspection about me and who I am as a person.
Exactly.
And perhaps the whole process. Did I want it too much? Is this the best thing for me to be doing? Maybe I can do something positive in the world, not as president. Maybe I can do more not as president than I could have done as president.
Exactly.
And regardless of whether I can or can't, that's really not what it is. It's about having gratitude for the life that you have, maybe to have gratitude for the platform that you have.
And the experiences. I mean,
And
that's,
the experiences
that's
that
an
you have.
experience right there. And what she could have done is she could have said, this experience showed me, and she's making up lies in her head, obviously, about Assange and stuff, but it could have said it showed me what not to do the next time around, or what not to do, to further things or whatever, But,
well, the what not to do, it really, if she wants introspection, I'm going to help her out right here. Let me tell you, Hillary Clinton, why a lot of people decided they didn't want you to have your finger on the button, and that they would rather have a narcissistic sociopath with bad hair and orange skin rather than you. Let's show this we came, we saw thing. Let's just remind people of this interview.
So, I mean, that is the land of unconfirmed.
Yes, we came, we saw,
Pause it.
he died.
Pause it.
Did it have
Pause
anything
it.
to do with your...
Look at her face. She is describing the invasion of a sovereign nation and the murder of its leader, who, Gaddafi, she's talking about Gaddafi, who was dragged through... Now, whatever you want to say about Gaddafi, okay? This man was dragged through the streets, beaten, senseless basically, and then killed by being sodomized with a combat knife. Having a combat knife shoved up his ass and basically bleeding to death, having his insides destroyed. And that's how this man died, and that's the look on her face. And you wonder why I might not want her to be in the most powerful position on the planet. Christian, you can come back to us. This, to me, like, yeah, Donald Trump has said some pretty shitty things. He said some warlike things. I've never seen him do it with glee. And it's not, and as far as I like, to be gleeful about your role in the brutal killing of another person.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But this is who wants to be in control of the state. This is who it is. And the narrative that's been coming up, and the narrative that she's talking about, you know, there's this entire thing about collusion, and this is where it gets very difficult, right? Is she's a horrible person. That's fine. She associates with terrible people. She ain't giving back that $250,000 that Harvey Weinstein gave her. Right? Was that Putin? Was that Putin? Putin gave Harvey Weinstein $250,000 to give to the Clinton Foundation, and I'm sure Putin is preventing her from giving it back. And then you wonder why somebody might not want you to be in charge. Because you're a fucking terrible person. Now, there's a dangerous narrative that's popped up. And it's this, we're going to talk about it. It's our news story number one, because it goes right into this. I feel like this is all on top of each other. So let's go news number one. So in the past couple weeks, executives from Facebook have gone up on Capitol Hill. Facebook is handing over data about ads that were placed, and it's shutting down Facebook pages that they're saying was run by the Russians. We have YouTube changing around its search algorithms, specifically so that things, it really happened with the Vegas shooting, switching around so that the conspiracy theory videos don't show up on the search. So basically trying to memory hole and switch around what information you can have. Same time, because of the Harvey Weinstein, Rose McGowan situation, Twitter is now saying that they are changing their algorithms and their rules about what is going to get you banned off of Twitter. And on top of that, to justify it, there's this story about these troll factories. I just want to dig into this because this is something that you are going to be seeing a lot more. Let's do this troll factory. This is from the Daily Mail. This is actually something that came up last year. Almost exactly, a year to the day, huh? 16th? Is today the 16th? Wow, a year to the day. That's prescient. Title: Russia launches a troll factory using fake Twitter and Facebook accounts to flood social media with lies about Britain and the West. Russia is believed to have set up a propaganda factory where at least 400 people are employed to spread damaging lies about Britain on the internet. The English-speaking internet trolls get around £600 a month to post comments on websites in the UK with claims to stir readers from the 2014 Scottish referendum was fixed to Mr. Cameron was never Mr. Honesty. As the Mail Online previously reported in 2015, it was revealed Vladimir Putin has an army of professional trolls running thousands of fake Twitter and Facebook accounts to flood social media with pro-Russia propaganda. Leaked documents revealed by The Sun now claim they are also posting comments on UK sites to promote Russia and slam the UK. So, Christian, we've got a situation here where, what are we talking about? We're talking about the idea, there's two separate pieces to this. The first piece is, we're talking about the idea that a state would have a propaganda arm that would push that state's propaganda out to the world. Okay? This is that idea. Mm-hmm. Now, this exists. We know Russia has this Sputnik, Russia Today, but so does America. Voice of America. So does BBC. BBC World Service. Mm-hmm. Every single country. You know, Iran has Press TV. Like, China has, Israel's got Haaretz, right? Like, This is very, very normal. You want to influence people in other countries, you spread propaganda, you drop leaflets. There was just a story today about Kim Jong-un is floating leaflets on balloons, like propaganda posters on balloons, landing in South Korea depicting Donald Trump as a mad dog. It's like, here's social media. They're saying, oh, Vladimir Putin's got this troll army. He's got this troll army. And it's like, well, we're gonna talk about how normal this is and the weirdness of it. The difficult part for me, and the part that I think is dangerous, is if you're going to say, and if you're going to take the Hillary Clinton paranoid schizophrenia route, it's very easy to say, well, anything that I don't like must be. It's suspect that it's Vladimir Putin. WikiLeaks, Vladimir Putin. She said people inside the United States, they're all in collusion with Vladimir Putin. And it's like, no, actually, sometimes people just don't fucking like you. And when you have a lot of people that don't like you, they might like you for a lot of different fucking reasons. It doesn't mean that they are all colluding to ruin your life. Maybe you're just an asshole. Like, maybe you're just an asshole. It doesn't mean everybody's against you. The only people who think everybody's against them are paranoid schizophrenics. That's what paranoid schizophrenia is. You think that there's some group, globalists, reptilians, right? And then everything trickles down. He's being controlled by the globalists. He's under this control. There's pedophile networks. They're talking to each other. They're flying people to here. They've got slaves on Mars. And that's what happens. You go fucking crazy.
Right.
When sometimes you're just an asshole. And sometimes other people are just assholes. And they don't even talk to each other. And they may even hate each other. So, troll armies. Troll armies. Russia's the only one that's got them. Vladimir Putin, he's paying all these people. Only one who's got these troll armies. Well, or not. Let's look at this Clinton story. This is from the Daily Beast. Clinton super PAC admits to paying an army of internet trolls. Hillary PAC spends $1 million to correct commenters on Reddit and Facebook. Federal Elections Commission's loopholes mean Correct the Record can openly coordinate with Clinton's campaign. Citing, quote, lessons learned from online engagement with Bernie bros, unquote, a pro-Hillary Clinton super PAC is pledged to spend $1 million to, quote, push back against users on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram. Correct the Record's Barrier Breakers project boasts in a press release that it has already addressed more than 5,000 people that have personally attacked Hillary Clinton on Twitter. The PAC released this on Thursday. The PAC was created in May of last year. This would have been May of 2015, when it was spun off from the American Bridge Super PAC, which is run by longtime Hillary and Bill Clinton supporter David Brock. Brock also founded the left-wing media watchdog website Media Matters for America. And it's not just the Clintons. It's not just in the U.S. Go to Israeli. This is from Haaretz. Israel recruits, quote, army of bloggers to combat anti-Zionist website. The Immigrant Absorption Ministry announced on Saturday it was setting up an, quote, army of bloggers to be made up of Israelis who speak a second language to represent Israel in, quote, anti-Zionist blogs in English, French, Spanish, and German. The program's first volunteer was Sandrine Pituosi, 31, from Kfar Maimon, situated 5 kilometers from Gaza. Quote, I heard about the project over the radio and decided to join because I'm living in the middle of the conflict, she said. Before hanging up the phone prematurely following a color red rocket alert, Pituosi, who immigrated to Israel from France in 1993, said she had some experience with public relations from managing a production company. Quote, during the war, we looked for a way to contribute to the effort, the ministry's Director General Erez Halfon told Haaretz. We turned to this enormous reservoir of more than 1 million people with the second mother tongue. And it's not just propaganda on the political side. Here's from The Guardian. Let's do sock puppet. This is from all the way back in 2011. Revealed, U.S. spy operation that manipulates social media. Military's sock puppet software creates fake online identities to spread pro-American propaganda. This is from The Guardian. The U.S. military is developing software that will let it secretly manipulate social media sites by using fake online personas to influence internet conversations and spread pro-American propaganda. A Californian corporation has been awarded a contract with United States Central Command, CENTCOM, which oversees U.S. armed operations in the Middle East and Central Asia, to develop what is described as a, quote, online persona management service that will allow one U.S. serviceman or woman to control up to 10 separate identities based all over the world. The project has been likened by web experts to China's attempt to control and restrict free speech on the internet. Critics are likely to complain that it will allow the U.S. military to create a false consensus in online conversations, crowd out unwelcome opinions, and smother commentaries or reports that do not correspond with its own objectives. The discovery that the U.S. military is developing false online personalities, known to users of social media as sock puppets, could also encourage other governments, private companies, and non-government organizations to do the same. Let me read that again. The discovery that the U.S. military is developing false online personalities, known to users of social media as sock puppets, could also encourage other governments, private companies, and non-government organizations to do the same. So, Christian, what we have is, in 2011, already the U.S. military is creating an army of trolls.
Yeah.
So the U.S. military starts doing something. And what? Is there an expectation that Russia, China, Israel are not going
right.
to counter that? Especially when it's something that it's like, well, it's kind of obvious how we counter this. Like, it's not some secret patented technology. It's like, well, let's get a bunch of people and let's have them start.
Right. And there's software.
Pay them to do it.
There's software that does it too.
And there's software. And let's write some software. Right? So who are we talking about? This you're going to hear. So this is the background from 2011 all the way through. This is something that every country is doing now. People need to be aware. I think it's also one reason why you should expect, you see that the militaries, that these governments, that the state wants to and is investing in controlling social media. When you've got it centralized, when there's a highly autistic Mark Zuckerberg that you can basically threaten to get him to do what you want.
Yeah.
When there's a single individual or a few individuals that at Google that you can threaten to change the YouTube algorithm, do you not think that the state is not going to do that?
Right.
Like, how is that not part of the plan? How is going to Jack Dorsey at Twitter not part of the plan? Of course it is. It's actually easier than having a troll army because there's only one person.
Right.
This is a problem with centralization. This is even more so. You know, I've been developing out this IPFS. It's very, very close to, it's a IPFS version of what BitChute does, right? Runs in the browser, all of that. So I've been working on it. Already works for small videos, no problem. I now have to get it to work for very large videos. But it basically gives you a totally decentralized YouTube. A YouTube that's uncensorable. Or at least a YouTube experience, let's put it like that. Because even with BitChute, they're a little bit centralized, right? This gives you the capability to have your own YouTube. If you want to create, add some things on and add a business to it, fine, add a business on top of it. Or just use it as it is.
Wow.
Right? You get a link, it's free, all of that. It's running on IPFS. And as IPFS gets faster, this thing gets even faster. So that's what I've been working on. And that'll be ready to give some portion of it to the public very, very soon.
Awesome.
But this is the reason why, for me, I'm like, well, software. Like, let's get liberty-minded people. And look, maybe you decide, maybe you take a look at it and you're like, this is cool. I got some good information. I feel more empowered, which is great. But I don't necessarily want to go, I'm looking at it, I'm not really, this software thing is not really for me. Totally fine. But at least you know, for people in the future to say, hey, you should go and do this. And certainly anybody who has teenage boys, This is like, for me, I think if you're in the liberty movement, particularly those people who are homeschooling their kids, like,
Oh yeah, this is great.
when they're teenagers, because because that's the age when it's really interesting to them, and also like their friends are all about the cool shit, but like especially teenage boys, if you're homeschooling your kids and they're like 12, 13, oh man, get them coding. Get them coding. Because one thing I can say, I haven't worked a development gig, like a paid development gig, in 7 years. Still, I'm getting emails on a weekly basis
Wow.
offering me six-figure gigs.
Yeah,
High six figures.
That industry is not slowing down.
Oh, dude, everybody's hiring. And even a junior developer. And I mean, a junior developer goes in making $60K in full benefits at a startup, right? $60K in full benefits. And there's a need for them. But I will tell you, the junior developers that I've worked with that have come in and have worked underneath me, a lot of them come in with next to no even ability to code. Like the first couple months, they have to have their hands held. They eventually get it, of course, but it's like it's almost like an apprenticeship. It's a $60,000 a year apprenticeship working in a fucking cool company with full benefits.
That's amazing. And think about all the stuff that you can do for your own projects.
Oh,
and
dude,
you know,
you imagine like you can literally build a multi-million-dollar business if you know how to code. You can build a multi-million-dollar business with no capital outlay, just your time. Just your time. Because it doesn't cost anything to write code. It costs basically nothing to host code, to host a prototype at least. And this is where the battle is going to be. And so for us as liberty-minded people, we have to understand it's coming to a point where there's only going to be two classes.
right.
There's going to be, like, people are, like, forget about the old class structure, right? The masters and the slaves. Like, in this case, it's literally going to be, when you have automation, you're either going to be a master of that automation, meaning you can automate robots, or you're going to be a slave to that automation, because if the robots can't do what you need to do and you don't know how to program the robots, you are a slave.
Yeah, they're gonna outwork, outcreate, out everything. I mean,
right now, less than 1% of the population can code at all. One line. And that's why I say, with this thing, the most important thing to me is, within the first 2 minutes, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to write code that actually does something.
that's cool.
That you can see it do something. You're going to be writing code, and people don't even know this. You can open up your Chrome browser right now, and you can write code inside your Chrome browser with a blank page. Most 99.9% of people don't even know that. If you know that, you're already in the 0.01%. You're already in the master's domain. All that's left from there is just to expand your knowledge. And that's what I want to put people in, because these are the things. You know what? Farming. That's yet another one. Agriculture, being able to grow your own food. But even in that case, you can automate just about anything. Being able to automate, being able to we live in a world of code.
So the code that you're going to be teaching in this, you'll be able to use it for software and hardware, like a
Yes.
Wow, that's
well.
fucking
Here's
awesome.
the thing: there's these platforms like a Raspberry Pi, right? It's a little micro computer. It's a Linux computer, little Linux computer. But you can use a Raspberry Pi. You could build a drone with a Raspberry Pi as the controller for it. No problem. You could have it build servos. You could control almost your whole house with a single Raspberry Pi.
Crazy.
It's already, the computer's there. The software libraries are already there. You just program the software libraries to tell it what to do. So there's your hardware, right? The hardware's built out thanks to China. Like, you can get cool servos. You can get all the electrical equipment. You could get relays. You could get all kinds of great
amazing.
Circuit boards that are no solder. You could get all that shit.
I mean, the possibilities with this, just learning this skill, the possibilities are endless. I mean, I'm
Literally
thinking
endless. Literally
terms of
endless, bro.
art, in terms of writing your own software programs for social media. And
Anything.
Yeah.
And to be able to, there's a whole other world when you talk about APIs. There's a whole other world that most people are not even aware of things that you can do with Facebook, with YouTube, with Twitter. If you can get your computer to speak to the API, to speak to their computers, there's so much greater functionality that you can do. You can use Twitter in ways that would blow your mind. I mean, I built for my younger brother, who's a professor at University of Chicago. He wanted to track on Twitter. He wanted to track basically gang activity between gangs in Chicago. If they were beefing back and forth, and he had like a series of like terms and everything. There's a scraper that's been running now, I think for maybe 2.5 years on this project. I believe he just got a grant on it. It's got all this data. It's tracking all of this, and I built this for him. You know what I mean? He doesn't know how to code. But it's like there's so much of our world that's accessible, that becomes accessible once you understand this language. It's like it opens up this magical doorway, and the world even looks different to you. Right? You start to see what's really happening behind the scenes. And I think that's how you break. That's how you break the hypnosis of the Illuminati, is when you're like, oh no, Illuminati means enlightened. When you're like, oh, I could do that. I could create a troll army. Oh yeah, I could easily write that software.
And that's exactly what the show has been about since day one.
That's what it's all about. So let's talk about this company that is the company in question here in this case. I'm just you can tell I'm just very excited, because for me, I feel like this is something that I can actually really contribute and change a lot of people's lives and really move this thing forward. And it's so much of what's going on right now is about creating fear, creating like the fear of hackers, creating the fear of the people who control this technology. And it's like, when you control the technology, you don't fear it. When you understand it, you don't fear it. I think that's for a lot of people. It's interesting because, you know, being half Mexican myself, and like, so my Spanish is okay. I can get by when I'm in Mexico, or, you know, go down to Panama or whatever. I can get by. It's not fucking fantastic, you know. I'm not reading Marquez in the original Spanish, you know what I mean? But I can understand, you know. I think that a lot of the fear from anti-immigrant people is because here's this group of people that's speaking a language and you don't understand what they're saying. And what if they're talking about you? Right? Out in public, out
Fear
in the open.
of the unknown.
And it's like, look, dude, take that. You're living in a world of code. You're living in a world of, believe me, there's plenty of, I know how it is. I've been a developer. I've been a software engineer. Yeah, there are plenty of us, and even myself at a certain point, where you sit around and you really do look at the rest of the world like they're a bunch of fucking idiots. And they're a bunch of sheep. And you're sitting in an ivory tower and you're doing things that they can't do. And you have financial security and you have job security and you're happy with your life and you're able to do creative things. And you look at the rest of them and you're just like, and if you're self-taught, really, you look at them and you're like, you're spending, what, you're going to spend $100,000 for a liberal arts education?
Right.
You're going to put yourself in debt and you're going to be, what, art history major? And you're not going to do shit? And I took 3 months of like evenings sitting around on my computer instead of fucking watching Walking Dead, and I taught myself how to code.
Exactly.
And I'm here and you're there complaining and I should do something for you. No, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like that. This is, I think, when you start to, like, your mind starts to shift. And
it goes with everything too. It's not even just code. It goes with everything. Like
it's understanding your world.
Exactly. Self-ownership.
It's getting a grip on the idea that, like, there's so much more out there. And that to eliminate fear, right? You should have the gratitude. If you're scared, if the world is a scary place, have the gratitude that you have the time and the energy to make it not scary by gaining some information.
Understanding.
Gain a better grasp of the world. And you can do it. But no one can do it for you. You can do it. And a lot of it is about just taking falsehoods and like throwing them to the side. So here we have a story about falsehoods on both sides. So one, there's the falsehood saying that, oh, this is only Russia that's doing this thing. And two, there's Russia spreading falsehoods, or are they spreading falsehoods? This is the, go to this IRA thing. This is the actual company. The Internet Research Agency, this is the one in question. They're known in Russia as the trolls from Olgino. Internet Research Agency is a Russian company based in St. Petersburg that engages in online influence operations on behalf of the Russian government. The agency has employed fake accounts registered on major social networks, discussion boards, online newspaper sites, and video hosting services that were used for promoting the Kremlin's interests in domestic policy, Ukraine, and the Middle East, as well as attempting to influence the 2016 United States presidential election to support the candidacy of Donald Trump. So, Christian, we've actually, this is... What's so interesting to me is like this whole, the fake account thing has been around for such a long time. I remember at the beginning of like bots, right?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, at the beginning of my show when I was on Gigolos on Showtime, and all of the cast members were all on Twitter. I remember getting a text from one of the other guys who was like, you need to go out and you need to buy followers because we've all gone out and bought, they went out and bought hundreds of thousands of fake bot followers.
At one point too, Instagram like deleted all the fake accounts or something.
Well, this is what I'm saying, that it's like, this was back in like 2011, 2012. Yeah. And I'm like, this shit has been around. There's been companies, you know, I have a buddy of mine who's a lawyer who hired a company. I believe the people were based in India, somewhere in like Southeast Asia, to write fake Yelp reviews for him for his DUI practice. So he's a defense attorney, but now he's one of the biggest DUI attorneys in California. Has like 7 or 8 offices up and down the state. Now, granted, he's a fantastic DUI attorney. Like, he's legitimately good. Like, it's not bullshit. But in terms of marketing, like, he's a great criminal defense attorney. In terms of marketing, though, you go on Yelp, there's all these fucking reviews. Now, they're legitimate people writing the reviews. It's not like a bot review. It's a real person wrote it. And there are different people. But I guess this guy just pays people in India, and you can just buy Yelp reviews. Why on earth would governments not do the same if they want to send information? So that's what I see here. How is this not happening? We see Clinton doing it. We see Israel doing it. Okay, Russia's doing it.
You can probably get it on Fiverr, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how is, like, and then you say, well, does that necessarily mean that every single fake purchase, this is the question that we have to ask, right? You're dealing in the political arena. There are a lot of people who are anti-Hillary, okay? You can go out, what I'm trying to say is you can go into the private market. If you are anti-Hillary, you can pay. We know that Donald Trump had a digital operation, right? Jared Kushner was running it. He started it up. We know that it was a heavy digital marketing, algorithmically based. They could go and pay. And why the fuck wouldn't you? And we see Clinton's PAC is doing it. Right? To do it on the other side. This is just a part of the game. This is not trying to influence the election. Yeah, you're trying. Of course, Putin's trying to influence public opinion all around the world. So is the U.S. It's called winning hearts and minds. This is very fucking normal. Right? This is the reason why the U.S. goes and gives cash to families who have who are collateral damage of drone strikes. Why they help out building farms and they give goats and shit like that. This is propaganda. It's hearts and minds. You do it to win the hearts and minds, and this is a cheap way of doing it. It's not hacking. It's not hacking, although hacking goes on. So Did Russia try to influence the election? I'm sure. Did China? Absolutely. Did Harvey Weinstein? Yes. He gave $250,000 to the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
think he was trying to influence the elections?
You don't just give that 250 just because you're feeling good one day. You know, there's obviously you're going to benefit somehow.
Everyone in the world has a vested interest in
Exactly.
who is the president of the United States. It's the most powerful political position in the world. Every single person has a vested interest, and especially the heads of superpowers, of the other superpowers. Of course they have of course they care, and of course they're going to try to influence it
Right.
because it matters.
Yeah.
So to say that there's and then to have an investigation about the shit is like what? Why? But let's talk about the things that don't get investigated. So you have this idea that Russia is hacking. Hillary Clinton says Russia is stealing information. It's stolen information. Principles over preferences. So it's okay, well, it's not okay when information against you is stolen, but go ahead and throw up this Kaspersky story. This is from Haaretz, bragging. Israel hacked Kaspersky and discovered Russia stealing top secret U.S. intel. Israeli intel from 2015 led to U.S. decision made only last month to order Kaspersky software removed from government computers, according to the New York Times and Washington Post. Israeli intelligence officials spying on Russian government hackers found they were using Kaspersky Lab antivirus software that is also used by 400 million people globally, including U.S. government agencies, according to media reports on Tuesday. The Israeli officials who had hacked into Kaspersky's network over 2 years ago then warned their U.S. counterparts of the Russian intrusion, said the New York Times, which first reported the story. That led to a decision in Washington only last month to order Kaspersky software removed from government computers. Israel's Kaspersky hack reveals that Russia is breaking all the red lines. The Washington Post also reported on Tuesday that Israeli spies had also found in Kaspersky's network hacking tools that could only have come from the U.S. National Security Agency. This is one of the most meta stories I've ever... So, Israel hacks Kaspersky, Russian company, finds, and this is the part that I don't even really understand. They first hacked the Russian government hackers, found out that they had some things to twerk Kaspersky software. They hack Kaspersky. In the midst of this hack, they also find spying tools, hacking tools, created by the U.S. that were stolen by Russia. Tools ostensibly that were going to be used to spy on Russia. It's like this is just the landscape that things are in. Now, does that mean that Donald Trump was part of it? No. Does it mean that any individual was part of it? No. This fucking hacking is going on. But here's the moral and the point of this whole story. Why it matters. It matters because people need to know that something is being thrown out there. This is like the old Red Scare. We're about to have a witch hunt.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to, they're going to try to make ties between. So for instance, if you shared one of these stories, you might be a member of the troll army. You might be working for Russia. Just like the idea that Julian Assange, right? So let's say Russia steals information. Let's say Russia leaks information to WikiLeaks. Let's say WikiLeaks publishes it. As Assange has said, the real question is it true?
Yeah.
It's not about, is it stolen? It's not about, is a leak illegal? It's about, is it true? Especially if there's crimes being described. Especially if those are war crimes, if there's illegality on the part of whoever it is. It's like, you want us to be upset that someone stole information and so that it could be published, and that information was about you committing a crime.
Exactly.
You don't want us to be upset at your crime. You want us to be upset at the theft of information that you did a crime and that it's being covered up. And so what people have to, is going to be very, very important at this point, because this is going to be a lever that's used. Mark my words. This is going to be a lever that's used, and it's one reason why there's a great need to start migrating off these platforms. Because not only is it going to be that you're going to be banned from these platforms, but that it's a red scare, witch hunt, whatever you want to call it, that you're also going to be potentially tied in, and they're going to try to say, in the court of public opinion, just like they're doing with Harvey Weinstein right now, right? They're going to say treason in the court of public opinion. You'll never be convicted of treason. You'll never be tried for treason. But in the court of public opinion, your name's going to be slandered, you're going to be ruined. And people need to think about this, especially the people who are getting a lot of views on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who are social media stars. Like, the landscape is changing. We know what the problems are. This is why, for me, I'm personally really much more about moving towards solutions and presenting those solutions, and we're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep doing that.
That's great.
I think we've got...
I think a lot of people are actually doing that right now too. They're transitioning off of those platforms onto decentralized platforms.
And we need more.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, we need as many as there could possibly be. We need so many that that it's out of anybody's control. Right, that it can't be shut down, and we need to keep talking, and we need to get louder. And look, I think that I can already see it. I already see Twitter, Facebook.
They're shooting themselves.
I see people getting disillusioned with it. It's the end, it's the last grasping of like the dying. Their little piece of the world is dying, and they can feel it. Believe me, even if their profits are still there and whatnot, they can feel it. So, look, we're going to see. I think that a lot of it is going to be a return back to many things that we had left behind. That's what we're going to talk about with Joel Salatin. Got a long interview with him. So,
awesome.
Let's go ahead and go to break. We'll come back, and then we'll go to the interview.
The spirit of art. The spirit of technology. The spirit of individuality. Baby Vodka. An ultra-premium spirit conceived by Vin Armani. Handcrafted and distilled in Las Vegas by master distiller George Rotz. Each bottle, a celebration of the individual, custom engraved and hand-signed by the creators. Each element blending in harmony to create a beautiful experience beyond imagination. Baby Vodka, the spirit of Vegas. Created by Vin Armani. Tailored by Christian Rays. Available for purchase exclusively with cryptocurrency at babyvodka.com.
Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And we are streaming live on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. That's facebook.com/Activist Post. Well, before we get to our guests, I just want to talk a little bit about counter markets. We are in October. Great issue this month. You can go and get that for free at countermarkets.com. Of course, Counter Markets is trends and strategies for maximum freedom. Now, as we've been talking about, solutions is where this whole thing has to go. And we've been very dedicated with this newsletter to bringing you ideas for increasing your wealth while increasing your freedom. if you want to be self-sufficient, and we've talked about this with so many people, and we're going to talk about it today, that self-sufficiency does not just mean, that you are generating your own electricity and you are generating your own food. To really be self-sufficient is what we're talking about that you're not reliant on someone else. That could be with entrepreneurship, with creating wealth and trading for it. I don't have to be a farmer necessarily. If I create a product that this farmer wants, or if I create a product that I can then trade for cryptocurrency and this farmer will take cryptocurrency. Same for an energy producer. We all have to work together. Yes, we all could be individual single units, but that's just not how it evolves. That's not how humans organically grow. And not only that, not everybody's passion is the same. It should be about us not having to have all the information, because we never, ever will. But if you're looking for the information on entrepreneurship, on self-sufficiency, on cryptocurrency, if you're ready to start doing this thing for real, that's who Kenner Markets is geared for. It's geared for people who actually want to make that change in your life, and it's not that hard to do. It takes so very little, and once you're rolling, as our guest Joel Salatin says, motion creates more motion. So that's the motion. Go ahead and take a motion. Go to kennermarkets.com. Trends and strategies for maximum freedom. Get your first issue for free, and if you pay with cryptocurrency, you're going to get a huge discount on your subscription. So with that, we are going to go to our interview today with Joel Salatin. My guest today is Joel Salatin. Joel calls himself a Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist, lunatic farmer. Others who, like him, call him the most famous farmer in the world, the high priest of the pasture, and the most eclectic thinker from Virginia since Thomas Jefferson. Those who don't like him call him a bioterrorist, Typhoid Mary, charlatan, and starvation advocate. He co-owns with his family Polyface Farm in Swoope, Virginia, featured in the New York Times bestseller Omnivore's Dilemma and award-winning documentary Food, Inc. The farm services more than 5,000 families, 50 restaurants, 10 retail outlets, and a farmer's market with salad bar beef, pigaerator pork, pasteurized poultry, and forestry products. Joel Salatin, welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you. It's a delight. Thank you.
On this show, one of the things that I don't feel that we get a chance to talk enough about, and you are perhaps the guru in this vein, is the connection between true freedom on every level and whether you want to call it food security, knowledge of how to create your own food, knowledge of just the food industry as it is. I think I'm very happy to have you here. Before we start, though, your bio is wonderful, but I think there's a lot of people who heard that first little part, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist. Those are three terms that we don't often hear put together, but I have a feeling that the environmentalist part in particular with you is significantly different. So can you tell us how you come at environmentalism and what that term means to you?
Well, to me, yeah, it's essentially stewardship, and of course the first word there was Christian, and so I think that we're just pilgrims passing through. We actually don't own it. Yeah, the courthouse says my name is on a deed, but really it's and in the Native American tradition, we don't own it. We borrow it from our grandchildren, and so the point of environmentalism and the way I view it is as a result of my footsteps, my walking here, I should leave behind more commons, that's more soil, more water, more breathable air, more social equity than existed here before I walked this place.
So that's very interesting. That seems kind of the opposite of typical environmentalism, at least the environmentalists that I know, who this idea of actually creating a situation where there's more water, where there's more breathable air, as opposed to just sort of conserving what we have for as long as possible. Can you maybe talk to us about how your approach to farming, your approach to agriculture is different in that regard. It's something that I think when people think about farming, especially at large scales, they don't think that a farmer would actually be creating more breathable air and more drinkable water.
Right. Well, that's for sure, agriculture's kind of conquistador orthodoxy certainly lends itself to that kind of perception, which is actually pretty accurate for the most part. Where I have a separation with the typical environmental movement is that that because of the abuse, if you will, the conquistador mentality of so many before now, and I get that there's this big burden. All of us walk around with this. If you care, you have this big burden on your back. Oh no, how can I interact with the environment without destroying it? All my ancestors did, and they're still doing it. And oh no, and so we have what I call environmentalism by abandonment. That the only way to interact with our nest is to get rid of human breath. Get rid of human presence and abandon it. And I turn that on its head and say no. I appreciate the guilt trip. I appreciate we should be repenting in sackcloth and ashes, if you will, for our abuses. But let's not abandon it. Let's instead use our intellectual capacity and our mechanical ability, opposing thumbs, and let's bring that to the environment with a caress, with a very participatory environmentalism, so that we're actually coming as participants as opposed to just dispassionate onlookers, and that's a very different way of looking at it.
So I think that on that platform, that's a good place for us to start this conversation, because it is so different. It's so starkly different. And I think that for many people, they don't think about agriculture in that way. Well, I guess for many people, they don't think about agriculture at all. And I know that that's something that you have spoken a great deal about. When it comes to the libertarian side, how do you, because this is a show that most of the people watching are libertarians in one vein or another. Why is it important for libertarians to start being particularly conscious of where their food comes from? How does that part fit in?
Well, that part fits in as my way of essentially putting a stake in the ground and saying, look, the answer here is not the government. We're never going to get environmental stewardship. We're never going to get innovation in the food and farm space. There is no platform for real innovation and problem solving with the government. The government program, any government agency, program, regulation, whatever, it finally, when it's all said and done, it's going to give prejudicial treatment, a positive prejudicial treatment to the status quo, to what is. And I know that's shocking to many people who think that the government is more trustworthy than businesses. So if we're going to have big business, we better have government big enough to control big business. And it just it's a rat race. Who can get the bigger agency? Can the government be bigger than Google? All right, Google's this big. Well, now we need a bigger government. But the fact is, you can't have thriving small businesses and incentivized outliers and innovation with big government. Thriving small business and big government don't grow in the same country, and so what, from my perspective, what I see is thousands and thousands of farmers that have the answer to E. coli, that have the answer to soil loss, that have the answer to the farm problem or the food nutritional problem. We have the answers to this, but we can't come to the marketplace because of prejudicial, discriminatory, overburdensome regulations that keep us from being able to be innovative. I'll give you an example right here in our county. This is a perfect example, and it happens all over the country. A Tyson chicken house is an agricultural pursuit. That's, pretty much every locality. If you're zoned agriculture, you can have a Tyson factory chicken house, by right, by decree. You might have to file some paperwork, but you're not going to have to get a special use permit or change anything. It's assumed it's agriculture. That is a massive building that uses, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day, stinks up the neighborhood, arguably is a, if you can smell it before you see it, that you could argue is your nose hitting my face. But anyway, the point is that is by right. However, if I, in the same locality, half a mile away, if instead of building a factory Tyson chicken house, if instead I want to do pastured poultry, which takes more labor on the farm, so I want to have an intern or a worker on my farm, because I'm going to use more people instead of concrete and machinery and capital intensive infrastructure. I'm going to use more people. I can't build an 8x10 cabin for an intern or a worker without some sort of a special use permit.
Right.
Even though the neighbor can build a structure bigger than 50 houses by right, essentially with no permit. And so this is the kind of discrimination against innovation that occurs every single day in our farms, in our agriculture, in our marketplace.
So it seems like when we're talking about innovation in agriculture that we have sort of hit this point where it's where we're having a flip. I mean, if we go back 100 years, there was a significantly higher percentage of individuals who were in the world of agriculture, either family farms or on larger interests, and that it was because of agricultural innovation that so many people were able to get off the farm. And now we have a massive amount of food that we throw away constantly, not to say that it's good, and we'll get into that. But now it sounds like you're talking about that there's a need for a new kind of innovation that requires maybe more people going back to the land, smaller interests. So what are the problems now that we're encountering, and what are the innovations that are necessary for us to take this next step?
Yeah, what a great question. So, if you're anyone who's over 50 years old can remember growing up and never hearing certain phrases that today are in the common lexicon. Let me give you a couple phrases.
Sure.
One is bovine spongiform encephalopathy, mad cow.
Right.
One, E. coli, Campylobacter, food allergy, gluten intolerance, salmonella. In fact, when I was a kid, I didn't know anybody with diabetes.
Right.
We all knew one fat person. Every community had a fat lady.
Right. Of course.
But it was one. It was one. And in your whole circle of acquaintance, if there was one, there was just one. And so all of these new phrases, this E. coli, salmonella, high path avian influenza, all these things. These are all a brand new lexicon that has come as a result of an assault on natural balance, on natural systems, which revolve around integrated systems, symbiotic systems, diverse species in proximity that keeps pathogens confused. I mean, ecology is a magnificent, complex relational deal. Today, what we've done is we've moved from integration to segregation. And we have the crops over here, the fertilizer over there, the processing plant over here, and the animals over here, and the plants over here. And the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker who were embedded in the community are now at a scale that the community doesn't want them to be nearby. And so we actually segregate our society into commercial districts, the fast food district, the resident. In fact, we even segregate ourselves into people who can afford 2,000 square foot houses and put them in one place, and the people that can only afford 1,500 square foot houses, well, they have to go somewhere else. Because Paris thought that the 2,000 square footers would have to rub shoulders with the 1,500 square footers.
Right.
And so we've bifurcated, we've segmented our whole social, our whole structure, our food system, our farming systems, our jobs, our vocation. You don't live where you work anymore. It used to be shopkeepers lived above their shop and they went downstairs. Now, I mean, if you want to have a business in your home, you have to move heaven and earth in order to get some sort of and a lot of times it's completely precluded because you're in a residential district. You can't run a smoker on your back porch and sell pulled pork to your neighbors. That's a commercial use in a residential area, and so now you have to drive somewhere to get a storefront and massive overheads in order to do basically a sideline hobby, feeding your neighborhood. These are the kinds of segmentations and segregations that make it very difficult for balance to occur and for resiliency to occur and for anyone to enter the marketplace, easily. Instead, entering the marketplace requires so many licenses, compliance forms, and all this stuff that the dream of entrepreneurism, instead of being birthed at a tiny embryonic scale, has to be birthed at a large scale, and the result is that the dreams and the desires of the entrepreneur have to be launched or birthed so big that the embryo can't be birthed. And that's the tragedy. That's the tragedy of the system. Not only is the entrepreneur denied the chance to express his or her dream, but the consuming populace is denied the chance of being of additional choice in the marketplace, choice that is not in the orthodoxy. And so you go to the supermarket and look at all the choice, but it's basically reconstructed the same stuff. Where is homemade charcuterie? Where is raw milk? Where is a host of things that we'd like to have that is not there? And so both the consumer and the would-be entrepreneur, one is denied access, the other's denied choice, and both of them break down.
I'm hearing you use these very organic metaphors when you're describing the system that we have, and I have a feeling that's very close to you because of the things that you're doing, and I want to explore that a little bit more. You're talking about this separation, and I get the feeling that what you're trying to communicate is that this separation is creating a metaphorical disease, but it sounds like it's also creating some very, very real diseases. Can you talk a little bit about how these things either were prevented by having those walls broken down in the past in agriculture, or how maybe they've been created by erecting those walls of putting these animals over here and these crops over here, whereas they used to sort of be together?
Sure. Well, look, we've had diseases for a long time, and so I'm not suggesting that if everybody does what we do, it's paradise and there's never a disease. But what I am going to suggest is that diseases and pathogenicity of those kinds of things, toxicity, those are a result of dysfunctional management, whether you're organic, chemical, small, large, doesn't matter. It's a symptom of mismanagement. The default position of nature is wellness, fundamentally wellness. That's the default position of nature. And if it's not well, then we probably messed it up. And so for example, let's take milk. In the late 1870s and 1880s, we had the early industrialization. I'm going to give just a bit of a history context here, because so many people today, they assume when I start talking, they say, whoa, wait a minute, we had brucellosis and undulant fever and smallpox, way back there, long before Monsanto and the evil, conspiratorial, global industrial complex came along. Well, here's the deal. Yes, we had that, and it proliferated during the industrialization of food prior to plastic pipe, water heaters, concrete pads, stainless steel, our understanding of viruses and microbes. And what happened after the Civil War, for example, if we just kind of take that period, as the urban sector grew, by 1910, the average metropolitan newspaper was running editorials every month about the implosion of the city because everything was covered in poop. I mean, there were horses, mules, and oxen on every street. I mean, you carried poop on your shoe into the market. You took it into the, where you bought your bridal gown, the bakery, every place you went, the accounting office. Manure was everywhere. And so a lot of diseases were being promulgated through the simple lack of hygiene due to the explosion of the urban sector prior to the automobile. By 1915, 1920, all of that changed. And so many of those 1870 to 1910 diseases of hygiene, what we know as infectious diseases, as opposed to chronic diseases, infectious diseases went away just simply due to everybody wasn't walking around in poop all day.
Right.
And we started getting indoor plumbing, refrigeration, stainless steel. People started taking a bath, twice a week instead of, once a month. And it was just easier. And so hygiene gradually shoved out the infectious diseases. And we could have stopped there, but instead we also industrialized the farm. And so what was, the Mayo Clinic started at the turn of the century with raw milk. What they saw were the swill dairies. Before refrigeration, what happened was that dairies and breweries, beer needed refrigeration, milk needed refrigeration. Prior to refrigeration and early, urbanization, the breweries and the dairies both were located right in the town. Well, how best to do the dairy than feed it the distiller's grains from the brewery, and this gave the cows acidosis and tuberculosis, undulant fever, and created all sorts of problems in the milk stream. Well, the Mayo Clinic figured out, if we went back to grass-feeding dairy cows, raw, unpasteurized grass milk is, like nature's elixir fixer. It's the ultimate health thing, and that's how the Mayo Clinic started. Was to separate its production practices from the swill dairies that were feeding brewers bypass stuff in the city. Well, instead of society, instead of letting the marketplace sort that out and letting the marketplace gradually come to understand, well, there's good milk and there's bad milk. Here's how you get good milk. Here's how you have bad milk. Instead, it was easier for the government to just demand pasteurization of everything. So they killed milk and made it not nearly as good, as helpful as it's supposed to be, killed the enzymes, and pasteurization came in. The problem was that society, instead of giving time for marketplace discernment and education, information to develop, demanded government interference. And as a result, today, if a lady at church wants a glass of my raw milk, I can't milk a cow and sell it to my neighbor or to a friend at church because the government has so decreed that is a hazardous substance. What's interesting is that we have now we now arguably have more disease and problems because the government subsidized corn growing and gave us cheap high fructose corn syrup. So it's perfectly legal to feed your kid 5 Coca-Colas a day, each with 16 tablespoons of sugar in it. That's perfectly legal, but a glass of raw milk is considered a hazardous substance. When the government begins intervening in the marketplace, it picks the winners and losers and creates a codified orthodoxy. Instead of allowing marketplace choice, it only allows marketplace sanction. This is allowable, that's not allowable. And you and I know that there is a tremendous amount of subjectivity in safety. I mean, I think people do unsafe stuff all the time.
Of course.
I mean, I think drinking, 5 Coca-Colas a day is unsafe.
Absolutely.
But people can do it, no problem. Safety is a very subjective thing. If you want to go bungee jumping, that's fine. If a person doesn't, that's their prerogative. But safety, what is safe? I don't think sending your kid to a public school is very safe. But safety becomes a very subjective kind of a personal decision about what's safe and what's not safe. And the crazy thing about this is that it becomes highly partisan, prejudicial in the system. I mean, for example, we know this year that 50 children will drown every year. 50 children drown in backyard swimming pools nationwide.
Sure.
50 children every single summer
Sure.
drown in backyard swimming pools. That's more deaths than have ever occurred from all raw milk in history.
Huh.
That's more deaths than occur from.
Wow.
So if we really want to solve deaths, we would outlaw backyard swimming pools.
Right.
And so this is the kind of inconsistency, silliness, foolishness, call it whatever you want to, that happens when bureaucrats enter the marketplace sphere and begin codifying what you and I are able to choose.
So clearly there are, if someone wants to go whole hog at this thing, no pun intended, and they want to, they want to start their own farm, and then obviously they can have the level of sort of freedom with their food sources that you have. But for the people listening who short of that are like, well, I can't go and start my own farm, or perhaps that's not their passion. They're passionate about something else. Where do you even start with this thing? What are the things that are even available to people to start pushing things in the direction that we would like to see them go?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm such an advocate of not shopping at the supermarket. Essentially, opt out, and that's not as hard as you may think. It's much easier today than it ever was, and people have to realize there is an entire, I'm going to call it a subculture, almost a guerrilla food system out here that is offering alternative fare. Some of it's legal, some of it's not. Some farmers, there are numerous buying club kind of setups that are offering completely illegal material, but they've structured it so that so that the consumer can share some of the risk. Mm-hmm. And there are certainly loopholes. There are all sorts of schemes. There are buying club schemes, food co-op schemes. Mm-hmm. I mean, in Florida, there's a pet food law that you can register dairy as a pet food for $25 per item per year.
Oh, interesting.
And so now there are raw milk dairies. You can get ice cream, kefir, yogurt, raw milk. In Florida now, it's all registered under pet food. I was doing some big foodie events down there in Orlando and Tallahassee, a couple of the big cities, and it was so hilarious that now these were urban foodie events. Okay, so these are foodie folks in town, in the big city, and they said that they had learned very quickly that if you want the good stuff, you get the pet food.
That's funny.
And that's that's pretty much statewide. And so there are lots of things going on. And so what you have to do is join Weston A. Price Foundation. That's a national group for heritage foods. Living real cheese, for example, that actually decomposes on the table with mold instead of Velveeta that you can sit on the table for a year and it doesn't change. Cheese isn't supposed to be squeezable and sit on your table for and not change form for a year. Because if it won't rot, it won't digest, and if it won't digest, it's not good for you, right? So there's a whole subculture here, is my point, and so turn off Netflix and invest some recreational entertainment time and money in ferreting out and finding your local food, your local food treasures. They're all over, they're all around, and you just need to find them.
So I have been an advocate myself and in my own life of definitely eating very organic and locally for a long time. I came up in Southern California, so that was accessible to me. I know there's a lot of people who are listening who are saying, oh, well, he's talking about like rich people stuff. He's talking about, this is, the people who have shopped at Whole Foods a couple of times and said, oh my God, like I've got a handful of stuff for $100. What do you say to the people who are saying, I can't afford to eat that way. I'm stuck eating this, eating basically this crap. What do you say to them?
Okay. Well, that's, of course, one of the most common questions I get asked, but it is the most important question. That one, and can we feed the world this way? So let's deal with the price issue. First of all, very, very few people, and I'm going to sound like I have no heart for the poor, but that's not my intent here. The fact is that very, very few people have any discretionary income. Whenever somebody says, I can't afford it, I say, well, take me to your house then, and I'm sure we're not going to find any alcohol. We're not going to find tobacco, soda pop, takeout meals, single service, frozen DiGiorno's, frozen pizza. We're not going to find, lottery tickets, golf clubs, flat screen TV, iPads, iPods, $100 designer jeans with holes already in the knees. There's a host of things, and so this extends all the way to most poor people. I hate to say that there is that discretionary stuff, income, and so this is a matter of simply prioritizing, and so that's one answer. The second answer is to buy in bulk, buy unprocessed. Listen, many of you probably are familiar with the movie Food Inc.
Yep.
And it's a wonderful, it's certainly a wake-up call, but the thing that frustrates me about that is that it promotes this same myth of expensive good food. When it takes that family goes by, Burger King, and they buy that big, that kid gets the big, Whopper or whatever, and he gets a, whatever, like a, 96-ounce soda and French fries and all that stuff. And then they go to the supermarket and say, well, we can't afford to get tomatoes or peppers, because it's too expensive. Listen, you could, at the time that movie came out, for the price of that Burger King meal, you could have gotten 2 whole pounds of Polyface world-class grass-finished beef for the price of that processed fast food meal. Now, you'd have to cook it. That's true. You'd have to cook it. But how much money does that take? Not much. It just takes a little bit of time. And so my point is that this is normally a scream of people that are wanting to be victims rather than people who are actually wanting to change the trajectory of their life or the trajectory of our civilization. And so if you buy in bulk and you use your kitchen for preparing, packaging, preserving, and processing food, I'm talking about canning, dehydrating, storing, recreating your own larder. I mean, one of the most dynamic, rebellious things you can do right now in our culture is to not eat industrial food. If you stop eating industrial food, it quits patronizing. It cuts off your money going to support agriculture subsidies. It cuts off the big agenda. It cuts off the lobby for the food, for prejudicial food regulations. I mean, there's a host of things that happen when you feed a different dog. And that's what I'm advocating. And the price, if you buy in bulk and get in your kitchen, you can actually eat way better. I mean, I know people that buy rolled oats in 50-pound sacks. I mean, the stuff, you can buy a 50-pound sack of oats for the same price as one loaf of bread in the store. You can feed a family of 6 for a month on a thing. We now have gadgets. We have bread makers, ice cream makers. We've got timed bakes, slow cookers, every kind of gadget in the world. When I say get in your kitchen, I'm not talking, fetching your water with a wooden bucket from the well and hearth cooking and washboards and get up at 4 to start the fire in the wood stove so you got hot enough griddle to cook eggs for Pa when he comes in for milking the cow. We have never had such techno glitzy gadgetized kitchens ever in the history of mankind, and been so dilatory and negligent in using the stuff that we've got. So it enables us to do the kind of scratch material, the kind of domestic culinary arts that great grandma did, but we can do it in a tenth the time. That's very cool.
So, it's interesting, and I do want to touch on this because it's something that keeps coming up over and over and over. I mean, you touched on this sort of victim mentality, and it's interesting because I see it in the people who are the most fervent in saying that the government needs to stop GMO, people from doing GMOs and factory farming and all of that. But at the same time, I see them consuming this stuff, not being diligent in terms of not consuming it and making the choice against it, but that they want someone else to, it's hard for me to understand that they want someone else to, to stop them from being able to have access to a variety of things on the market. It's as you run across this, how do you deal with an individual like this, or how do you help to educate somebody like this to take a more voluntary path?
Yeah. What a wonderful question. Okay, so the way I deal with it is I kind of go back to basic childhood. How do we teach our children to be responsible? We all know helicopter parents, that hover over their kids all the time, and of course helicopter parents create boomerang kids, because they never leave home. They keep coming back and back and back because they can't get started because they've never been able to do anything. And so how we actually create responsible young people is by giving them responsibility. I call it by letting them exercise their discernment muscles. Here's the deal. If I never have to make a decision, my discernment muscles atrophy. My ability to discern bad and good, better, worse, my discernment is non-functional. And if you think across the parts of your life, whatever you're making decisions for, the more freedom you have to make decisions and choice, the more you put attention on discovery.
True. So true.
Yeah, it is. And so we have actually atrophied our decision-making prowess, our decision-making muscles in our society by asking the government to make all those decisions for us. Now, it's fun to argue, what's the track record of the government? Realize the track record of the government is abysmal.
Yes.
I mean, they told us for 50 years, throw out the lard and butter and use hydrogenated vegetable oil. And now, not only is that inverted, but now the acceptable, the official acceptable rate of hydrogenated vegetable oil is not a little, it's zero.
Right.
And then they told us to powder everything with DDT, and then they told us to they gave us a food pyramid in 1979, and it put Twinkies and Cocoa Puffs on the bottom as the foundation, and you can overlay our type 2 diabetes and our obesity, our carbs problem. The fact is, we would be a much healthier society if the government had never told us what to eat. And so when you look at the tracker, of course, now they're telling us, we need to feed dead cows to cows. Well, they did that for 30 or 40 years until we got, mad cow disease. Now, of course, they're telling us to eat GMOs and irradiation and hydroponic and nanotechnology embedded particles in our food. Your bloodstream's going to love nanotechnology particles, in it. And this is the orthodoxy. And if you dare to buck that orthodoxy, then you're marginalized, demonized, and criminalized as a heretic in the culture. And so when the consumer advocates, the henny pennies, the paranoia, the fearful people who ask for government security, what Ben Franklin said, anyone who's willing to give up their freedom for security gets neither.
Right.
And he's exactly right. When you demand that protectionism, that interventionism, what we call government oversight. I want government oversight. What that's asking is, I don't want to make a decision. I don't want to know. As long as it has a U.S. stamp on it, then I'm fine. And what happens is that businesses that jump through the hoops to comply and get those stamps, those businesses, every time there's a problem, rat pee and peanut butter in Georgia, or, name your E. coli, name your whatever your outbreak is, what's the first thing that every CEO does? They call a press conference, and standing in front of the microphones, they look right into the camera and say, we have complied with every regulation and every government license and blah, 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 blah. They don't have to take responsibility for their negligence because they have a government stamp. And so the government stamp allows businesses to shirk their responsibility and their actual, customer liability. They can shirk all that as long as they have this government stamp, and it becomes a cronyism fraternity for big players who game the system, work the system, and those of us here on the bottom, us, we peasants and entrepreneurs who dare to come with pastured poultry or grass, raw milk, or non-GMO pork, or heritage tomatoes, or homemade pasta and homemade charcuterie, bologna. Those of us that have all these wonderful, wonderful butcher, baker, candlestick maker, embedded, integrated, transparent, community-based offerings of choice to our community, we can't see the light of day because the regulatory structure is scale prejudicial. And that's the unfairness and the tragedy of the system.
So on that note, I do want to talk about, we covered on the show the recent Maine food sovereignty law where they had changed some things around, but then also we also covered the even more recent federal crackdown where they basically said that they're not going to have it. In your view, with this moving forward, I know that there is a movement to try to have some pushback against this. That was clearly one that a lot of people were excited about, and now it looks like it's going to be even more draconian. What do you think as you look at the sort of the legal landscape, as you look at the places where those people who do want to make some moves on the governmental level, or who do want to try to roll back some regulations, where are the weak spots in the fence, as it were, that you could see that we could possibly start moving some things, or are there any?
Yeah, here, look, let's appreciate that right now in our culture, I'll just say the big governmenters. I don't want to, make this partisan. I'm just going to say the big governmenters. They essentially view you and I as we're not independent people. We are owned by the state. And here's the thing: if you're going to have a national health care system, and trust me, I'm not going off topic here. This is totally related.
I'm with you.
As soon as you decide that I'm not responsible for my health, that you're responsible for my health, we create an economic prerogative, an economic need for you to decide what is risky behavior for me. And so it all boils down to am I an independent now, look, I'm not independent to where I run out and go 100 miles an hour on the interstate, okay?
Right, sure.
I'm not an anarchist, but let's appreciate that there are good laws and bad laws, good regs and bad regs. And if a regulation is scale prejudicial, then it's a bad regulation. The beauty of mile per hour, speed, the speeding laws is that it's as easy to comply driving a little itty bitty smart car as it is a tractor trailer. It doesn't take any more effort for either of those to comply to the speed limit. When you have a regulation that is very easy for big operators to comply with and very difficult for small, then that becomes a scale prejudicial. And that's a bad regulation. All right. And that's the way all the food laws are. So here's what's happened. The big governmenters have decided that you and I are essentially citizens of the state. We're not independent people, and as a result, because the state picks up the tab for so many things, from food stamps to women with independent with children, name all of the different safety nets, quote unquote safety nets, that society picks up now. Every time there is a safety net, that creates an economic necessity to determine what is an economic liability in behavior.
I got it. Yes, that makes sense.
And so listen, I tell my liberal friends, I was up at University of Pittsburgh, I think it was, most recently, had a classroom of these college kids. I said, listen, last week I got on the metro in Washington D.C. I was going in to do something on Capitol Hill, and here comes a guy onto the metro with me. He's 400 pounds. He's got a bushel basket size bag of taco chips, cigarettes in his pocket, a 2-quart, soda drink with him. And I looked at those students. I said, I want somebody sitting right here. I want you to tell me why I'm responsible for his health.
Right.
That room went dead silent. They didn't have an answer. They didn't have an answer. And I think that those are the kind of sound bites in the libertarian community. I think too often we're viewed as the people of no.
Right.
No, we don't want this. No, we don't want that. No, we don't want the other. And I think we need to really invert that in our messaging, and we need to be the people of choice. I mean, when I use, I've actually drafted a letter to President Trump, to do a food emancipation proclamation, and I use words like, look, among voluntary consenting adults, why can't we have food choice? Today, consenting adults, choice. I mean, these are powerful words. I mean, we now have the freedom of choice to change our sex, but not freedom of choice to get a glass of raw milk from my Guernsey cow. Really?
Right.
It's crazy. So anyway, I think that we need to really work on our messaging instead of saying, no, we don't want welfare, no, we don't want this, no, we don't want that. Instead, flip it on its head and message the choice and the opportunity. Look, let's take a good one. A really hot foodie item, for example, is food deserts. I'm sure you're familiar with food deserts.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a big deal. All right.
Yep.
All right. I don't like food deserts. Nobody likes food deserts. What's the answer to food deserts? Most food deserts are in kind of, tumble down, decrepit parts of cities.
That's right.
That have a lot of vacant lots, a lot of, places that are not being productive. Mm-hmm. Well, let's imagine, let's take the tough one. Let's take the minority single mom of 4 kids. Mm-hmm. And she's in a food desert, and she wants to help herself and help her community. Okay, so she goes to this vacant lot next door, and she puts in some chickens, rabbits, and tomatoes, and peppers, and garden, and starts raising garden and she's going to make chicken pot pies, for her for the people in her community. Sure. So she does her garden, and she comes in, and her kids help her, and they put this stuff together, and they start selling it in their to the people next door in the condominiums, in the tenements. Well, before the aromas would even get out of her door, there would be 10 bureaucrats knocking on her door saying, "Wait, do you have a business in your residence? Right. Oh, wait a minute. This building is not zoned, is not building inspected for commercial use. The beams in the roof have to be, half again as big to be a commercial, building space. Where's your HACCP plan, hazardous analysis critical control point? I don't see a fire extinguisher on the wall. Right. Where's your handicap parking? Where's your license to operate your stove with your electrical outlet to have a business? I mean, a million different things. And so the answer to the food desert is not another agency and another welfare program from outside. It's giving freedom to people on the inside to grow from the ground up and the inside out. Our solutions are not outside in. Our solutions are inside out. And that's what we need to be promoting is the ability to offer that kind of freedom. So often in our, kind of a conservative libertarian communities, we just say, no, we shouldn't have another agency. And we don't present truly practical, empowering, compelling, positive, liberty-minded alternatives to the things we're against. And that's a shame, and that's bad on us. And we need to change that messaging.
I mean, I like this. I like this, and I am a firm believer in the idea that the two are combined. That the sort of the reliance on the state is definitely coming from the state forcing that reliance. So
yes.
So for those people who maybe want to start experimenting, who want to dip their toe into the water of providing, let's say, their own food to start out with, and so maybe they're going to go to some farmers markets, but they say, what could I actually do myself? For somebody who has no green thumb, for somebody who just wants more liberty, maybe they're in a food desert, maybe they're in an urban environment. Where is even some place that they can start, get their hands dirty, literally get their hands dirty? What are the easiest things for them to start with in providing, at least putting some things on the table that they've grown themselves?
Sure. Well, obviously, if you have any amount of land at all, I mean, even if it's a postage stamp yard, you can grow something, and there are now there are so many amazing urban technologies. I mean, there's these tubes. They're like 6-inch tubes with pockets in them that you can hang on your patio, and you can grow all of your herbs, in this tube in compost. You can grow mescaline mix. I mean, there are pot gardens. I mean, you don't have to grow pot. You can in pots is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Pot gardens. You can have a beehive on your roof. You can put a solarium on the side of your house so you can grow all winter long and get passive solar heat as well. You can put a vermicomposting kit. I mean, these things are as small, basically the size of a basketball, and they're kits that you could put under your sink and put all your kitchen scraps in and grow red wigglers and earthworm castings and use that for your house plants and grow your own stuff that way. I mean, I'm a huge fan of kitchen chickens. Throw out the dog, the cat, the gerbil, and the boa constrictor, and get 2 chickens. Yes, in your house. They don't take any more room than a bureau, and you can feed them your kitchen scraps. They give you a couple of eggs a day, and you can participate in the mystery and the awesomeness of life. And I'll tell you, if you got teenagers in the house, there is no better role model for teenagers than chickens, because they're the first thing up. As soon as it gets daylight, they get up. They're the first animal up in the morning. They're happy all day long, turning trash into treasure. As soon as the sun starts to go down in the evening, they're looking for a place to, they're going to bed. I mean, up bright in the morning, turning trash into treasure all day, working happily, and then going to bed as soon as the sun goes down. What better role model could there be for teenagers?
I love it. I love it. So the solutions are out there. Where is the best place? I mean, obviously you're out and about, but if people want to, or if you had one suggestion, maybe we could do it this way. If you had one suggestion out of the books that you've published or the films that you've done, where would you suggest people start with your own sort of content that you've created? What do you feel is the starting place to get into Joel Salatin's mind for all those people who want to know more?
Well, certainly it would be my book, Folks, This Ain't Normal. That's just a great eclectic cultural. It's all the kind of the stuff that we've just talked about. Folks, This Ain't Normal. It's about the abnormality of our day, compared to historical templates and track records. If you want, I have another book, Everything I Want to Do Is Illegal, Stories from the Local Food Front, and that would get you, if you're really wanting to pursue this whole regulatory environment, that would be the book for that. Beyond that, the urban farming sector is huge, and if you just Google in urban farming, you would be amazed at all the things that are happening in the urban sectors, from in cul-de-sacs, in expressway right-of-ways, in city parks, in old bulldozed crack houses and whatever. It's just unbelievable the kind of stuff that's being done. I write a column called the Pitchfork Pulpit in the Mother Earth News magazine. Mother Earth News magazine is a little bit of a hybrid between the homesteader and the urban sector. A lot of stuff is keyed there. And if you ever get a chance to go to a Mother Earth fair, they have 6 of them a year throughout the country. And if you ever get to one of those fairs, they will have all of this urban gardening, horticultural, food production, little chicken mobiles and coops and everything you can imagine, from biogas toilets to just amazing. It's the most eclectic collection of self-reliant, do-it-yourself, opt-out, techno gadgetry in the world. And again, we so often we relegate. If I could just touch you with this, so often we relegate our offenses and what we're opposed to and our political stance, to just rhetoric and to, letters to the editor or whatever, rants, diatribes to our spouses, whatever. And what I would like to see I'll just say our tribe do, I would like to see us understand that there are very few things as libertarian oriented as simply not patronizing the orthodoxy. If you just devote yourself to not patronizing the orthodoxy, this is education, medicine, food, recreation, entertainment, investing. If you just start opting out of the orthodoxy and enjoy being a heretic, I have a speech that I do, Heretics of the World Unite, because true innovation and solutions of the future, they always come from the lunatic fringe. The heretics, they're the ones that end up, yeah, they were right, And so the sooner you embrace the heretic fringe and opt out of the orthodoxy, the sooner you will enjoy, I will enjoy, we will enjoy being a part of the solution instead of just ranting and complaining and feeling, disempowered in light of all the, the juggernaut that's opposed to us. Hey, let's take a couple niches out of that juggernaut. Let's take a couple shots at it, and by exercising the freedoms that we have.
Wow. Powerful message. This has been quite the conversation. I thank you very much. Eye-opening. I'm going to have to go back and listen to everything that you've said a few times. Joel Salatin, thank you for being on the show, and hopefully we can have you back on again.
I would love it and be delighted. Thank you very much for taking the time.
The most important thing to me, I think, and I noticed it in talking with him, and something occurred to me, is that we've said from the beginning, and we say that, like, this is not a political show, and that our movement is not a political movement, because politics is that's violence, right? It's these sides. But the thing about, even if we want to talk about the sort of libertarian political bent, the difference is it's really all about, and it goes right back to your idea of gratitude. It's the idea of walking through the world saying, I am so thankful that I have the capability to do something, because you're thankful that you have two hands, that you have the ability to walk and talk and think. And if you're hungry, you're a human being. We've been growing our own food. We can supply our food. We can supply our energy. We know how to do these things. It's just about opening up our minds.
Absolutely.
And not saying that it's somebody else's job, not saying that it's the state's job, all of that. The word empowering is bad, but it is empowering.
Absolutely.
It gives a lot of power to the individual, and I mean, that's what we're all about.
Absolutely. And one thing I noticed too, and this has been a reoccurring pattern for the last couple of weeks for me, is the idea that you can't think and know at the same time. In order to know, the distance between knowledge and wisdom is going to be experience.
Yeah, you've got to have it. Yeah,
he's got the experience and he knows the stuff. And the thing that I kept realizing through that interview is, like, you just got to get out there and do it.
That's the only way.
Yeah,
that's the only way that you're going to have the wisdom. It's just to start and to do it. And I think that now is the time. Like, and it's not about fear. It's not about, the world's about to end, so start prepping. But I think the time for prepping is done. I think we're ready. The tools are here, and I'm looking forward to the next couple decades of building out these alternatives, because I think we're coming into some dark times for the people who want to stick around with that old culture, but for the crypto savages, we're about to come into a new dawn for us. So thanks for today, bro. We're out of time. Let me just say goodbye to the people. I want to thank you for joining us yet again, and I want to say a very special thanks to my guest, Joel Salatin. That was definitely one of my favorite interviews that I've done so far. Looking forward to having him back on, and look, I have no green thumb, but I'm very excited about farming and very hopeful for the future. If you want to check out our archives, you can do that at YouTube, youtube.com/Vin Armani. And also, you can check us out on the podcast. You can do that on iTunes and Stitcher. We will be back next week, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific time, Monday morning. And until then, stay free.